Today, I'm opening the show with a discussion on the poverty situation in the country. And to join me in that important conversation, I have two distinguished public intellectuals joining us virtually from New York. We have Professor Mujuba Olufunke Okome, who is a professor of political science and women's studies at the City University of New York. And in the studio, we have Dr. Taufik Raimi, a development expert, economist, and a politician. Prof, from New York, welcome to Inside Sources.
Good morning.
Okay. Good afternoon from Abuja. Good, excellent. Dr. Raimi, welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Okay. All right, so let's start with Dr. Raimi. Now, in my view, let's start that way. There are two compelling problems in this country, in my view. And poverty is one of them, corruption is the other. There's a way I believe that corruption and poverty go hand in hand, but that's a different conversation, I guess. But what I want you to open the discussion with, after you are taken to the prof, is do you think that our set of leaders over the years, have we seen a certain clear understanding that we are dealing with a huge number of our population who are, multi-dimensionally poor? Have we over the years, and this is not just about the current administration alone, over the years, is there that sense of effective awareness and understanding that majority of Nigerians are poor people?
I think this is a very important topic you have brought up today. And in my view, I think it should be at the very pinnacle of conversation, not only at the national level, but also at the subnational level. Poverty should be very key in discussing our way forward in Nigeria. But before I go into that, let me congratulate you. Congratulate our president, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who at this point has led us to celebrating or marking 65 years of our independence. Because you equally ask that what has been the vision or the mission of our various leaders over the decades as regarding tackling poverty. Right. Do they have self-awareness? So I want to feel that over the past years, while various administrations acknowledge that our people are impoverished, our people are poor, this poverty has continued to grow. What I've noticed from my trend analysis had been that there has not been clear goals of all the program, very successive government, both not only at national level, like I said, across the subnational, the state. Of course, you hardly could even hear anything about poverty program at the local government. But at both national and state, there hasn't been that clear vision to say, what are we targeting? That is why I've identified 4 things that should have been happening over the years by our leaders, not only our leaders, because poverty alleviation cannot occur except it is tripartite. What do I mean? The government has a role to play, non-governmental organizations have a role to play, individuals themselves have a role to play. What are the visions that must be crystallized? One, because these are what has been missing over the year that I've discovered. Right. There is no clear vision as regards what the programs are meant to achieve. There are 4 principal things that this program must be focused. Number 1 is to reduce hardship. So any program that is being brought out must be weighed towards, is it targeting to reduce hardship? 2, it must answer the question, is it targeting to improve the living standard, the quality of life of our people? 3, this program meant to propel economic opportunities, because it shouldn't just be an intervention that will not lift people out of poverty. For instance, if you give handout for 3 months, after 3 months, what happens next? So that should be the 3rd vision. The 4th goal is it sustainable? Sustainability. When you look at what has happened over the decade, I have seen that there is no continuity. I've seen problem of corruption. I've seen more people even falling. Some people have been raised out of poverty, additional people are falling. So that is why our program by different administration, there has not been continuity, like I mentioned. There has also been high level of corruption. There's also ghost programs. So these are areas that we can discuss further as we move on. But honestly, about awareness, yes, some of them make political statements rather than appropriate policies that can be followed through with strategies, methodologies that will achieve those goals that I had earlier mentioned.
Prof, in your opening, take note of the fact that we have figures, estimates from international agencies, World Bank, even some estimates from our own National Bureau of Statistics. Some of them put the figures of poor people to over 50%. So you could argue that majority of Nigerians are living in poverty in that sense. So with that in mind, do you think, in your own view, that our governments, over the years, especially, in our 26 years of continued democratic civil rule, have you seen a level of awareness and concern from the people that lead us, both at federal and state levels? Prof.
Well, I haven't, and I want us to refer to the National Bureau of Statistics figures given in 2022, that 63% or 133 million people in Nigeria are multidimensionally poor. That means they are not only poor in terms of the income, they're poor in health, they're poor in education, they're poor in living standards. And we have had, paradoxically, economic growth. Every time our GDP grows, there's a lot of celebration. So why is it that poverty is persisting? I see government failure, and I see it as a progression. It is not something that is only the responsibility of either the subnational or the national government right now. I see politicians in Nigeria, the people that are elected to office, privileging their own well-being as important to national security. But the well-being of the majority of Nigerian citizens is not seen as important. Some of us have even talked about the weaponization of poverty, that then politicians, our governors or the president or first ladies will go to a poor community and they'll do something, they make a grand gesture. And then everybody is starting to praise them. Populism is not going to solve the problem of poverty. What would solve it is very, very careful planning that puts people first, that realizes that even our Constitution says that the welfare and the well-being of Nigerians is the primary responsibility of government. That's why they are there. So some people also put this in terms of the dividends of democracy. Like, democracy is supposed to open up freedoms to people, including freedom from poverty. But that's not what we're seeing. That doesn't seem to be part of the agenda. Our leaders have no qualms spending money, giving themselves a housing allowance, a clothing allowance, ESTA code when they are traveling, and buying planes and yachts and all that for the president, building a house for the vice president, while majority of Nigerians are destitute and their lives are going nowhere. And this poverty that we're talking about, it's also something that will affect life chances into the future. The fact that many children who are in poverty are stunted in growth, and that stunting affects them in the educational outcomes. It affects the health outcomes. When the health of the majority is not taken care of, it has economic ramifications. And then when people are poor, they are not able to spend money in a way that helps the economy to grow. So we are only depending on what we're earning from oil. We privilege the interest of the minority in government, and those who are the legislators at all levels, and we don't take care of the majority. It is a very warped way of doing, governance. So this is a reflection of poor governance. And I dare say also that, the problem of poverty is more felt in rural areas than in the urban areas. It is more felt in the northern geopolitical zones than in the southern geopolitical zones. And children are the ones who are suffering the most. 67.5% of Nigerian children from the ages of 0 to 17 years old are poor. What kind of future are we trying to say we are building? So, a lot of glowing rhetoric is not going to solve the problem, and mismanaged government programs where people also embezzle money is not going to solve the problem. We're not serious about addressing the issues of poverty. All we want to do is that when the president or the governor or the first lady goes somewhere, we'll then say, oh, we're going to save this like 20 or 50 or even 1,000 people. Everybody is clapping. That doesn't solve the problem. Let us see this as something that we need to foreground if we want to be the great nation that we say we want to be. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Professor Okome, for those opening comments. So we're going to be digging deeper into the issues, and I want to take it back to Dr. Raimi here in the studio, and then we come back to you. So, rightly in your opening comments, you did refer to the 65th anniversary, and the president actually did make a speech. So I wanted to follow up with you and say that. So, if majority of Nigerians are poor, a lot of them even multidimensionally poor, did you think that the president's speech took cognizance of that when we were celebrating our 65th anniversary? Or generally, the way our leaders, not just the president alone, the president is number one, so there's a lot of focus on him, but presidents and governors and, political leaders, if majority of your people are poor, how do you speak to them? When we have an Independence Day speech, should we talk about poverty and what we are doing? Should that be the highlight, even in our communication, not just in the programs? And we are still coming to that. But I wanted to follow up with you on that, Dr. Raimi.
Okay, well, that's a very important question as well. I think the president's speech and the entire approach which the president or the federal government took this time, to me, suggests some kind of serious awareness about the economic situation majority of our people are going through. Of course, we knew the kind of economy that the president or the federal government inherited. In fairness to the president, inherited an economy that where we had 30 trillion ways and means, as we know, where we also have a backlog of unpaid debt, local debt, which he cleared $7 billion, where we also have a COVID-19 support from IMF loan, $6 billion or so that he also cleared. We know situation whereby our subsidy was used over not just the last administration, decades back. Subsidy was only benefiting only very few people. So he undertook a number of bold economic reforms, which all of us, scholars, researchers, practitioners, have debated. And I think, including local and national analysts, World Bank, IMF, WTO, all of us have opinion. And I think there is a consensus already built that those economic reforms and policies are laudable, are necessary, are critical, though they have brought some untold further hardship, which has also taken many other people into poverty. All these are acknowledged. I think the president's speech and the approach, like I said, which they took this time around, in not having major celebration. Before, it would be a lot of fanfare. But you can see that both federal government and state government this time, either they are commissioning a kind of role, or commissioning projects and all that, is all in totality in awareness that people are suffering. Be that as it may, I feel that the current administration seems to acknowledge this by instituting a number of economic reforms. You know, I believe that our economic recovery, that is the paradise we are hoping for, can only happen when we attain 4 stages. Economic stability, which we have currently attained through the economic reform and, coming out of ICU. Then economic consolidation, which I believe, I interpret as we should not go back to the days of those problems we have mentioned earlier. Economic growth is what we are currently experiencing, which is where in December last year, our economic growth, GDP, was 3.4 billion, percent, about the best in the last 10 years, as it were. So once we continue to have economic growth, the El Dorado we are anticipating is the one I classify
but the problem,
as a
Dr. Raimi, is that just like Professor Okome,
yes.
Before I take it back to her, just like she said, the fact of the matter is that we have this GDP growth.
Yes.
It's not reflecting shared prosperity on the part of the people.
There are 2 reasons.
And wait, and it's not just a recent thing.
Yes.
You know, those in government now must take responsibility for what is happening now. But I understand that this is a cumulative problem. We do have GDP growth that don't really address the problem. And I think, and then you respond quickly and then we take it to Prof. I think the problem is that we are only looking at the economic reform programs, the macroeconomic stability, but we need to have a program in the stopgap before we get to those consolidation of which you speak. And I think that right now we have a weak social safety net that can keep people alive, sustain them until the consolidation. That is the problem that I see currently.
Okay, there are
quickly.
You are quite right, actually. But you see, the way economic works is basically that is like if you are going to 10, you must start from 1 to 10, unfortunately. That is the way economic work. So that economic growth must continue for a number of years before we can actually have the real economic development, which is where the exact standard of living of our people will be so much pronounced. There will be high increased healthcare facility and all that. But I agree with you in a bit that's why I said earlier that the kind of economy that we are hoping for will not happen if there is no trickle-down right policies at the state and local government level. Imagine that some states will embark on economic programs that are just like handout that will not transform the life of the people. Imagine states in the north that are privileged with vast acres of land, but corruption is there. We have a problem of insecurity. We have banditry. So the problem we have been having over the years is that most governments have not married needs of the people to the kind of program they are pursuing. Secondly, corruption have eaten deep into even the resources that have been provided. So that is why it is very good, as you have raised it, and we have seen it also, that there is the need for economic program that will be designed to, first of all, have that intervention which will cushion the effect. Like the CNG vehicle that the government talked about, how many of it have we been able to provide? Like the energy sector, the refinery. Imagine if the refinery, the government refinery, NNPCL refinery have worked the way it's supposed to work. These are things that will give us more money as government. These are things that will also create more employment for the people, because until we achieve increase in employment, lowering food crisis, lowered energy crisis, energy cost, there is no way that the impact
Okay.
that we're anticipating we're going to have it. But I think the outlook of this current administration and also rubbing down on increase in revenue, if this revenue are properly utilized at the state level, and at the local government also level, if we also have local government autonomy, there is a promulgation of the Supreme Court verdict on local governments. If we can also have all this working the way they should work, I believe the life of our people will get better.
Okay, good. Thank you. Prof, so what's your own take? So often we have GDP figures going up that doesn't affect, the real people. And in my view, the president's speech on Wednesday was almost silent. He didn't recognize the fact that majority of Nigerians are poor. And if you look at the policy, in my view, that is meant to be a stopgap, we haven't seen, sufficient resources, or even we've not seen what I call a demonstration of an effective planning regarding social safety net. Except, of course, if you will talk of what a governor like Governor Makinde did in Lautech a few days ago, where he increased the salary of, maybe about a number of security people, and people were excited. What's your take on how these things are being approached, Prof?
Okay, thank you very much. It's heartbreaking that there seems to be an embrace of a system where there is clear, I think, understanding that you have majority of Nigerians poor. The figures of 133 million multidimensionally poor is not from any external agency. It is from the National Bureau of Statistics. So there's nobody in government that can actually give the excuse that they don't know that majority of our citizens are poor. Also, if our governors and local government officials and our legislators and our president ride through the cities where they're located, they will see poverty glaringly. It is unavoidable. So this idea that, the president acknowledged, acknowledgement is just one thing. It is the beginning. It's not the end. Now, if there's acknowledgement, one would expect that logical and rational leaders would also cut back on their own perquisites and the way in which they are living as though we are in a country that is wealthy, where there's no problem with poverty. You cannot gel the way in which our leaders live and the privileges that they give themselves, and then the plight of majority of our citizens. So what they're doing is unethical, and it is a key governance issue. So the government programs that they design to alleviate poverty have consistently underperformed, to be generous to them, And this is because of governance failures. The governance failures include weak legislative accountability, political interference, they'll put the wrong people in the positions, and then policy designs that are not putting people's needs first and foremost and center. There's also massive corruption in Nigeria. This is not news to anybody. There are high levels of corruption at all levels of government, and this is an obstacle to prosperity. If people don't know, people in government, if you don't know, please realize that. This prevents poverty reduction programs from being properly funded and implemented because people steal the money. Then there's economic instability. We have high inflation. Food prices are, out of the roof. This has eroded people's purchasing power. And one of the things that caused the most recent inflation is the subsidy removal that everybody is touting as helping majority of Nigerians. It hasn't helped. So if people in government haven't gotten the memo, the subsidy removal has created increased misery and precarity for majority of Nigerians. We're also oil dependent, and we don't, this oil sector doesn't create enough jobs, and many other sectors of the economy have been negatively impacted. So this is why, because agriculture is what majority of our people are in, and there's no interest really that is signaled through the way in which we do our budgeting and our planning in things like agriculture. We have um, um, poverty increasing exponentially. There's also insecurity. There's violence, there's banditry, there's terrorism, people who cannot go to their farms when this happens. There's a lot of people who are displaced and they can't participate meaningfully in the economy. And we have massive food insecurity, even in our bread baskets in Nigeria because of this. But we don't show any awareness. We just kind of talk up here, and the people are down here, and they're experiencing these problems. And then we throw them the crumbs, the press covers it, and we think we have done something. That is not how to govern. There's also lack of investment in the critical sectors like education, like healthcare, like infrastructure, and a very poor business environment. Business people complain all the time that if they want to take a loan, the cost of servicing the loans is so high that they, how would they make a profit? This is something that hampers both economic growth and job creation. So if we want to solve the problem of poverty, we have to be concerned about people's health, because people who don't have access to health and quality health care, which is missing in Nigeria, they cannot participate in the economy as meaningfully as they could. The high percentage of infant and maternal mortality in Nigeria is heartbreaking. So anybody that says they're caring about poverty, please address that problem. It is irrational for us to have a country where the government is saying, oh, we are aware that there are problems, and we have the kind of healthcare system that we have. Even our president and all our big people, they don't depend on Nigerian healthcare system for their medical care. So what makes them superior to all Nigerians? If what we have that poor people are patronizing is what we have in the country, everybody should be in that healthcare system. And I think if that is the case, we would have had correction. But we have exit options when we are elites, especially the people at the highest levels of government. This is not how to govern a country. And it is actually also disgraceful that the most important people in our country when it comes to the governance are depending on healthcare systems created by other countries. Are we not embarrassed? What would it take? So low human capital returns are also to be expected.
Okay,
when
Prof.
you don't really have programs that work, that put people first, that are pro-poor, where people's health, people's well-being, people's human security, access to decent work, where they're paid living wages. If that is not something that is generalized, and it is just by the whims and fancies of important people, because a poor person speaks up and then you help 50 people. Look, we're not serious.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Because of our time, let's wrap it up. Very important insight that you've shared. Let's bring it to Dr. Raimi as we begin to close. So you are a development expert and economist, a lot of experience, especially even in the housing sector. What do you think we can do in the stopgap to help ameliorate the problem of poverty? If we have majority of our people poor, that means that poverty must be number one priority as we are dealing with insecurity and corruption. I mean, I concede that the current president at the federal level, at least we have a Ministry of Poverty Alleviation, so we give him that credit. But just like Prof said, we haven't seen enough demonstration of sensibilities to the fact that majority of our people are poor in the way we conduct ourselves. We are buying new jets, we are building the vice president houses, and there are all kinds of other things that the people look at it, and anybody that looks at it objectively, you will think that these people don't understand the depth of poverty. So what do you think ought to be done in the stopgap before we get to the economic development of which you speak, Dr. Raimi?
Okay.
Quickly.
That is quite a way to go. Like I said earlier, for poverty to be reduced or to be eradicated, we must have it on a three-leg arrangement. First, it must involve government, and government must champion that cause.
Government must lead it.
Yes.
At both levels.
At both levels. And that we have not seen enough. Two, like I said, non-governmental organization can only support. We must see them as supporter of poverty reduction and eradication. Three, the individual themselves. We must also see that over the years, as you are aware, some will be given agricultural implement. Instead of using it on the farm, they will go ahead and sell it. So we also need a kind of reorientation. So what must government do in the immediate circumstance? I think a number, especially at the federal, state, and local government. So let me speak quickly on each of these. At federal level, I want to see more of, providing, I want to see more of alleviation in terms of provision of the CNG vehicle that have been talked about. I also want to see more in terms of the kind of development we are seeing in FCT, infrastructural development that can support ease of transportation. You can see that the Federal Capital Territory under the current minister has been turned to what we call a construction site. And when you have construction site going on, meaningful construction work going on, it will employ so many people. Artisans will be employed, skilled labor will be, professional will be employed, businesses surrounding it. So that is very key. That we must have across the state.
Okay.
So again, I want to also see our government also reducing, recurrent expenditure that are not impacting on the life of the people. Okay. So these are some of the things that we must do. Okay. At the local government level, we must begin to challenge our local government authorities, you understand, to providing primary health care facility for our people, provide schools. It's not just about cash handout and then publicity that will even be of more monetary value than the tangible, endowment that have been given to our people. So all this has to be done. And it then means that we must have a structural planning, a proper planning that will provide social, economic, and humanitarian development. Because until we address these three areas, we aren't going to solve poverty in Nigeria. But it is possible because Nigeria is blessed. 230 million people, a very large market with over 40 different type of mineral and natural resources. Nigeria has no business being poor. Absolutely. But unfortunately, based on decades of leadership, inconsistent policy, corruption, this has already taken us here. But I believe that we can move forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Because of our time, Prof, I'll give you 30 seconds if you have a last word. Just 30 seconds, please. What should happen?
You're giving me 30 seconds?
Yes.
Okay. All right. If you want to solve the problem of poverty.
Yes. Right. Go ahead.
Because poverty is multidimensional, as we have seen, and it is structural. You need to invest in human capital at all levels of governance. Education improvement and healthcare improvement, and also expanded economic opportunities. for all Nigerians, not just the people who are well connected, is important. And then government has to get involved in job creation, something that, every government says it does, but they do very poorly. So also increasing the prospect that the outcomes will be better because you put the right people in these bureaucratic jobs and technocratic jobs is important. And accountability. If they're not doing well, what happens to them? There's also a need to diversify from oil and develop critical infrastructure. I agree.
Exactly.
The roads, electricity, energy, also giving people water so that people are not spending like half their income or all their time looking for water and clean water. There's also need for targeted social protections. And past administrations have done this, but there's been a lot of embezzlement. This embezzlement must end. There needs to be transparency. If you are spending our money, government, you have to show how you are spending the money, the results that are being experienced, and what you are going to do better. So I don't want to hear talk of somebody is acknowledging poverty if we don't have an accountable and transparent and efficient government that puts the interest of the majority of Nigerians first.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Mujiba Olufunke Okome, Professor of Political Science and Women's Studies from the City University of New York, and Dr. Taufik Raimi, Development Expert, Economist, and Politician, and also the CEO of Rift Value Consultants. Thank you for coming to Inside Sources.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Prof, for coming to Inside Sources.